Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at 1992 BenchWarmer cards. This is a really unusual topic for this channel because I talk about sports cards, and BenchWarmer is, let's face it, pinup art. That's what it is, except for the fact that it's also basically baseball cards. It's an interesting set where it's a combination of the two. Now, in the 1990s, it's kind of redundant to say that a card set was unusual. It was really distinctive because that was a very common theme throughout the entire decade. But with BenchWarmer, I can't really say that because it's just a class all its own. I mean, it really is a standalone item that occupies a fascinating space of, yes, sports cards. It really does. These were cards that were marketed for and sold in sports card shops. So this topic is one that really can't be, it can't be overlooked. It's something that I'm going to have to do at some point, and that's just the nature of it. But again, these are pinup art. That's what it is. These are pictures of beautiful women, and it's sports themed. Now, since we are talking about basically pinup art and about models, let's give a very brief history of why we got to where we got to and why the set does exist. And pinup art is essentially kind of a creation out of the Victorian era. It was always seen as kind of seedy, and it didn't really have it didn't have a very good reputation. However, that did evolve over time, and by the time that we got to World War II, it had gotten, not quite mainstream, but it had gotten to the level of being one of the main forms of art that was put on bomber nose art. And so anybody who had gone to an airfield during World War II would have seen this. It would have been very commonplace to see this. And okay, some of it was kind of seedy, but for the most part, it was pretty decent stuff. And it was just there for people who were homesick, and they were really mascots. That's mostly what they were. Now, this wasn't a major evolution in the history of pinup art. It's just a really cool opportunity to see a moment of time frozen, just captured right there, where you're able to see where pinup art was at that time. But it was becoming more mainstream, and over the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the evolution of pinup art in terms of the world of illustrations was such that it was not really that unusual. In the print world, in the illustration world, it was so commonplace that art houses like Haddon Sundblom, who is really famous for creating and illustrating the Coca-Cola Santas, well, he was also doing pinup art at the exact same time. Same artist, same shop. This was just a part of the world of art that he was creating, and that was very much the case for a lot of illustrators. Now, when you add in the addition in the 1950s, 60s of Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue on one side and Playboy on the other, you get more of a mainstreaming of the whole world of pinup art. But it was really in the 70s and the 80s with posters that it really became, pinup art became very much mainstream. These were, instead of being things you took out of magazines or off of calendars and pinning up on the wall, you know, a poster is a full professional affair where it's supposed to go up on the wall. It really did become very mainstream. But while pinup and basically swimsuit art was becoming more common, the world of models was also evolving with this. So in the 50s and the 60s, you could have models who could actually sustain something of a career being pinup art models. And by the time that you get to the 1980s, along with the posters, you also had the whole world of fashion that was evolving as well, to the point where models could now not just make tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, they could make millions of dollars. There was a whole upper tier of models that was just, it was amazing how high they had been able to climb in the world of art and business. And you had not just stars, but you also had superstars. These were models who had tremendous followings, dedicated, passionate followings. And the dedication of these fans was tremendous. It was totally healthy, totally understandable, logical, absolutely nothing wrong, just wonderful, wonderful fan dedications. But models didn't have to be superstars to make a living and to have a following. There was a whole lower tier of models that were still able to maintain something of a personal popularity, something of a personal fan base, but they didn't necessarily have the marketing engine that the supermodels like Claudia Schiffer, Cindy Crawford, Brooke Shields, they didn't necessarily have those types of marketing machines to really get a whole worldwide or even national base. But still, some of these lower tier models were able to get enough of a momentum of their own fame that they were able to do decently. but there was still a limitation because this was still an analog world. We did not have a World Wide Web, which meant that if you were going to get your name out, your presence out, it had to be done through channels. And channels could be kind of tricky to pull off. So models were, unless you got into like Sports Illustrated or something at that level, you still had limitations in terms of how far you could bring your career. And for some models, this kind of wore on them. One model in particular, a woman by the name of Connie Woods, got kind of frustrated by the fact that there just was so much of a limitation, because there were a lot of models out there who did have followings, but there was no mechanization for the models who weren't making tons of money for producers to be able to be known. And she wanted to think outside the box and figure out a way to maybe open up that door. And she came up with a crazy idea. Well, there are baseball cards for baseball players. Why not baseball cards for models as well? And this is actually a very logical idea, because, I mean, trading cards, from the outset, trading cards were not created for baseball. Trading cards were created as trading cards, and baseball cards were part of the world of trading cards. But you had cards of movies, you had cards of presidents, you had cards of automobiles, you had cards of the Audubon Society, for crying out loud. Trading cards are just trading cards, and you can collect anything. And let's face it, a card set for following models would make a lot of sense. Sports Illustrated, that would have made great sense. And eventually they would do that. But in the late 80s, you basically didn't have any trading cards about following women overall. You know, a woman might show up and set here or there, but a card set dedicated to famous women of some fashion, just that wasn't where we were at this point. Usually, if you found women on cards, it was not in a set, it was in a deck. It was not trading cards, it was playing cards. And they didn't have their name on it, and probably not their clothes either. There just wasn't any space where women could be seen as professional and as somebody who would be followed for their own fame. Well, Connie thought, well, why don't we change that? Why don't we go ahead and make a card set, a baseball card set for models, and look, why not throw a theme on it? Why not go ahead and make a card set that is themed around baseball? So that's what she came up with. In 1989, she put together a 6-card set. 5 of them were all related to baseball. So that was the theme of how she was presented on the cards, because it obviously would be her. She would be the model on the cards to show how they would work. And the cards, 5 of them were related to sports, and the 6th one was just a swimsuit shot, because of course it is. And the cards had kind of an avant-garde appearance. They were kind of cool in an abstract way. But they didn't use the cheap cardboard that Topps used. They used something more akin to what Don Russ was using. So the cards weren't just cheap cranked out affairs, but they weren't really professional. This wasn't the score card stock that we were starting to see really change the sports card market. But look, she's just cranking something out to get people interested. So this card set was put together, and they were put together in a wax wrapper. And inside it was a stick of gum. So she actually created a pack of sports cards, all themed around a model. And on the front, there was an image that was made as, basically, this was the mascot, known as our little benchwarmer. That's what the mascot's known as, based on Connie. So Connie is the model for it. And voila, you have an actual pack of cards to promote this. And she started going around to card shows and really trying to drum up interest. And this was a great opportunity for her to make it a 3-dimensional affair, because she could be around promoting a potential card set for somebody to make, but at the same time, she also became the celebrity, so she could actually sign the cards as well. A lot of these cards are signed, but it wasn't just the cards that she made. She also, because why wouldn't she made a poster. And this poster was it was one of the images that she used, and it was a really good combination that she had. So she had 6 cards, wrapper, and the gum, and she had a poster. All of that created to really show the potential that the cards would have. They weren't the highest quality. In fact, the poster that I just showed you is pretty grainy, but again, that's not the point. The point was, let's turn this into a reality. And eventually, she did in fact find a business partner. So by 1992, she was finally able to make the cards. And the wait that happened before they made the first card set was actually a really good thing for the final product, for the final card set that was created. Because technology in sports cards, or the card industry, had finally caught up to what she was going to need to make the cards she wanted to make. Because she wanted to make cards that showcased each of the models, but at the same time she wanted to do it in a way that was like mini posters. And that's the key, because by 1992, a lot of innovation had happened in cards. It's difficult to comprehend how much innovation happened in cards just in the first couple of years of the 90s, but it really was meteoric. So by the time that she was able to make her cards, the cards had medium and high gloss card options. They had a really professional card stock that allowed really good printing. They had high quality printing, so really good dot rates so that you could get really rich details in it. And you could make full bleed cards. Let the borders run right off. That meant that the image could just expand out and it felt a lot bigger and a lot richer. That's what these things did. And that gave the ability for these miniature posters to feel a lot larger, because they had all of the things they needed that a large poster would have. They just did it in miniature. And obviously, these are all themed around baseball. Now, this wasn't the only card set that was done at this time. So Studio also did a card set at the same time, which was doing something very similar. But in the case of Studio, they had a border around the outside and all the women were in bathing suits. It was done in a very cheap way. This was more the kind of mid-tier trading card stuff that was done at this era. And you can really see that the cards, while they do a good job of showing the models because the pictures are good, the card does nothing for it. Whereas when you look at the 1992 BenchWarmer card set, it is so different. These cards are just rich, luxurious photos first and foremost, but also entirely. They used the same model that both Pro Line and Pro Set Platinum were using, where they had nothing on the card front except for the logo. The rest of the card was just dedicated to a great shot. So here you have Brandy Downs, and you can look at the back of the card and see, okay, it's Brandy Downs. And then you got Haley Altman. And you can look at the back of the card and see, okay, yeah, that's Haley Altman. And then likewise, you get Sue Etheridge. And every single case of these cards is the fact that it's all about the image on the front. And it's not about making the model look good as much as it's about a gorgeous shot that she is a part of. She is the center of it, but it's the whole luxurious picture. This was a card set made by photographers and made by models. This was not made by an 11-year-old. And so this absolutely just really pours forward as more of a fashion shoot than it is about hot women. Now, that's not to say that they didn't have a fair number, or at least a couple of cards that kind of pushed the envelope. But none of these cards got lurid. A few of them they kind of pushed it a little bit far, but the key to this is it's really high class. Connie didn't want to think that way. She wanted to think of these models as, models. They're professionals. And that's what this card set was all about, and these cards come across. In fact, when you look at the card back, setting aside the hot pink, because what are you going to do? They have the first and last name on the top, which is very important. True Studio did that. They have some light bio information. True Studio did that. But down at the bottom, they have essentially a CV. Now, the first line or two is essentially written by an 11-year-old, even though it may be a 25-year-old, 11-year-old. It still has that ring to it. But then it just gets right down to business. It tells you these were the magazines that she's worked in. These are the TV shows or the movies that she's appeared in. Has she been in a calendar? What are the different things that she's done? In the case of Brooke Morales, she had been the cover model of the 1991 Sport magazine. And then you also have a couple of women who had been cheerleaders. And these, I think they were all Raiderettes. All of the cheerleaders in this card set, I think, were all Raiderettes. But there were a number of women who had been Raiderettes. And so every one of these cards worked as a CV to tell you and modeling agencies and potential outlets about the career of each one of these models. Some of them were just getting started. Others had a bit of modeling experience over the years and had a pretty good career set up. So these cards worked. both as gorgeous pictures, but also as great opportunities to give each one of these women an actual career. I mean, isn't that what a baseball card is? For models. And as you've already noticed, I keep saying baseball cards, but it's not just baseball cards. It's actually, you've already seen hockey cards. Well, they also had cards of football players, or I shouldn't say football players, but football themed art. They also had pictures that were themed around basketball. Not only did they have these cards that were themed around these sports, but the set itself is just a scattershot affair where everybody's scattered all over the place because there's not really a structure to it. Yet, what if somebody were OCD enough to take the set apart and put the set back together so that all the sports were grouped together? That person would find out that there are over 15 different baseball players shown. There are almost 30 different football players shown. There are 11 basketball players and 11 hockey players, which means you have a baseball team, you have a football team, you have a basketball team, and you have a hockey team. And they don't have very many positions. I mean, okay, Leslie Bremer, yeah, she's a catcher. And Bridget Butler is a pitcher, and there are a couple of cases where, yeah, they really did lean in on this is the position that would fit with this individual model, but they didn't build it as a team. Instead, they set it up as if the BenchWarmer intramural sports organization, they had these teams. There are enough players for baseball, enough for football, enough for basketball, and enough for hockey. And they left it at that. But that was the beauty of it, is that they built it out across the entire span. Now, did they bother with coaches? Not so much. Although I do have to say with Billie English, I'm not really sure what they had in mind here, because I want to say that they had her in mind as a coach. What they didn't have her in mind for is a ref, because the reason I say that is they actually had refs. In fact, card number 1 was Connie Woods, which very appropriate. I mean, she put the thing together, and she's a baseball umpire. The hat kind of gives it away, but the big thing is they had 3 other umpires. They had a football ref, they had a basketball ref, and they had a hockey ref. So they did have a referee for each one of the sports, which again, with Billie English, I'm not sure exactly what they were going for with that, but I don't mind. But they didn't just stop at referees. They also had the training room. They had the weight room staff. I think they might have had boxers. I mean, they didn't really get entirely heavy into it, but they've got locker rooms, stuff like that. They have cheerleaders because, of course they're going to have cheerleaders. They have a mascot, for crying out loud. I mean, it's really great. They got to the point where they had a concessionaire. Just one concessionaire, but they covered pretty much every aspect of sports. And that's the beauty of it. This is a card set that was built where they were just having fun. It was photographers taking a whole bunch of pictures and really creating a rich environment of just lots of great imagery based around sports and across the entire span of sports. In terms of the 4 main sports, and again, maybe boxing, I'm not sure if they really cared, but it doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is these are really fun images. They also had a couple of spots open that they didn't fill with unique models. And so they created what they called replay cards. Not a lot of these, but these are just additional images of a couple of the models. Plus, in one case, in the case of Tamara Carrera, they actually have her in a different sport. So they have the basketball card, and then they also have a football-themed replay card. And sorry, I just got to say it. Bo Jackson, big fan, but you're no longer my favorite 2-sport star. Sorry, I had to get that out there. But the replay cards they weren't designed in the same way because you already had the bio information on the main card. And so here, this was a second card, so it was just an opportunity for a big picture on the card back. But it wasn't just these, they also had bonus cards. They had a whole subset of bonus cards. Interestingly enough, I said that these cards were scattered all throughout the set. There was no rhyme or reason to the cards, and that is true. But the cards were designed around 9 card pages, and they had a couple of subsets that were built around that way, starting with these bonus cards. There are 8 bonus cards, and these are they're basically headshots. They're all glamour shots of some of the models. Connie Woods is one, Brandy Downs is another, And these are not related to sports. They just show the models off as, models. The ninth card in this group was actually center of the page, and it was a header card. And the header card, it has a card number on the back. It's a shot of our little bench warmer. And you would think that as a header card, it should go at the front of the card set. But they had it here right in the middle, this is basically the middle page of the entire card set. So it's kind of a thematic center point. They also had another subset of challenge cards, and the challenge cards these are pictures they didn't use in the card set, and then they had artists recreate it so that they become challenges for you to figure out who is the model on each one of these cards. And it's pretty easy to figure out who most of these models are. The cards are not numbered on the back. They don't have anything. It's not like you look at the front and then turn it over and figure out who it was. The card backs actually have parts of a big cartoon, a 9-card cartoon. So when you put them all together, you get this one big, very juvenile cartoon. And whether it's good or bad, it is there. But that creates basically the numbering for these 9 cards. They also had 2 smaller subsets related to the cartoons, one being 4 different multi-panel cartoons for each sport. So, or 1 per sport, 4 across the entire run. So each one of these little cartoons is again, very juvenile cartoon related to our little bench warmer. And these were staggered throughout the set. But they also had a series of 4 stickers that on the last full page, they form a diamond right in the middle or not in the middle of the page, but around the middle of the page. And these 4 are designed with theme art, one for each sport. So they have baseball, they have football, they have basketball, and they have hockey. All 4 of these show up with individual stickers. And because they're stickers, there's nothing on the back, so the card number's actually on the front. The set also closed out with 2 cards, the last one being a checklist, but the one before that is a big collage of images, almost all from the set. And on the back, it's a quiz card. They have a whole bunch of questions that you can answer for a prize, which I will get to in a second. But that was the set. That was what they had for the main set, but they also had some inserts. And the first insert was actually that same theme art I said right in the middle of the card set with our little bench warmer. Well, they did another one with no number. So this actually is a header card. But it's not the only one. They also did one with a different border color. So they have 2 different border colors, and these came up a lot in packs. So if you bought a box of cards, you would get at least 1 set, and you would get at least 1 of the actual title cards in the set, but you would get multiple of the 2 not numbered cards as well. So there were a lot of these that would show up. They also did autographs, interestingly enough. And the autographs are, well, okay. So at this time in 1992, autographs were extremely new to card collecting in terms of releases in packs. It had only been in 1990 when that had started with Star Picks and with Upper Deck. In 1991, we finally had the first major release of autographs, which was Pro Line, and by 1992, you were just starting to see Fleer get involved. So that meant that autographs were still new in terms of how they would be approached. And while in the main sports, they actually did have some sort of an authentication, here in BenchWarmer, they didn't do that. So there are a couple of models who autograph their cards in packs. And what's weird is they used a blue ballpoint pen. Normally, that's not what would be used for an autograph, but in BenchWarmer, that's exactly what they used. So they look like they're fake, but there is a small collection of models who have these autographs that show up in packs, and tcdb.com does have a checklist of who has autographs. I haven't been able to validate that, but I can't verify what they have. But I can say that usually the ballpoint pen should give it away. But like with Haley Altman here, I got this card on eBay, and I don't know if it's valid because it's not in TCDB's checklist, but it looks like it would be valid. I can't verify it myself. I do know who two of them are because I got them out of packs. I actually did get them in research for this video. So they did appear in packs, but they are not in any way distinguished as official autographs. That's just the way that they are. The only other insert that they had into packs was a voucher for a Prism card. I'm going to talk about the Prism cards later because unfortunately that's a part of a very big section of the story, which I'll just let you know right now has to do with Connie no longer being a part of BenchWarmer. That tragically is part of the story, but the two go hand in hand. So I'm going to talk about Prism cards later. In the meantime, that's what was released in packs. They did have a promo card set though. And the promo card set was 9 cards, and these cards look basically the same on the front. On the back, they're in black and white. A few of the cards have different images on for the mugshots, but there are 3 cards that are distinctly different. The first one is Connie Woods, which is basically the same, but they changed the background. The second one is Bobby Phillips, and this is actually one of the cards, this is one of the images that was used in the main set that you didn't know about. It was basically kind of like an unused image. They did use it in the promo set. But the third one, the big one, was Brandy Downs. And this one actually has me kind of disappointed because, look, I love the Brandy Downs card in the set. It's a great shot for her in baseball. The thing about the hockey card in the promo set is, I mean, it's a good shot, but here's the thing about hockey. The hockey cards in the set are all washed out. They all look terrible. I don't know why. Now, they also all happen to be in bikinis, which I really don't get, or almost all of them are in swimsuits in the hockey cards, and I don't get why they do that either, but Brandy Downs fits in with that. But I look at the Brandy card and I see, why? That one looks great. Why couldn't the rest of them look good? But at any rate, that's the one good-looking hockey card, and it happens to be a promo card. They also did a promo release because they had to basically invent their entire market. Yes, Studio and some other card sets were starting to pop up at this time, but they weren't really gearing themselves up to be a major player in the sports card market like BenchWarmer was trying to do. So they did go to the San Francisco Card Exposition, and they had a whole promo sheet. They had 25,000 of these individually numbered to really show off the cards. And they are collectible, so that's part of why I'm talking about them. And these sometimes did get autographed by the different models. So this was a part of the overarching discussion about BenchWarmer. Now, when the cards arrived in packs, the way that you found them was they were in card shops. They were literally sold there on the counter in card shops in a box that was so bright pink you could see it from down the block. I mean, just, it is pretty surreal how bright that box is. Thankfully, the packs weren't quite as bright. They were still hot pink, but they were toned down. But what they did with the packs was the same thing Score was doing. They have 4 different pack designs. And you remember the little mascot designs for each of the sports? Well, that's what they used on each one of these 4 packs. So all 4 packs, they have different pack designs. But it did make it kind of fun. And in every single pack, they had a little folded, basically an order form. And this gave you the ability to buy, well, they had a video, a making of, because of course they did. Sports Illustrated was doing that. Why wouldn't they? They had sweatshirts they sold, hats, albums. They also had postcards, interestingly. And the postcards had a big collage of images. It's basically kind of like a bigger version of the cards in the quiz card in the card set. And I'm not sure entirely why they did it, but hey, you can print anything, so they did. And according to this, they also had a BenchWarmer update newsletter, which was like a fan club newsletter. I don't know if they actually ever did that, but they did promote that they were going to be doing that. And in that little order form, they also explained the rules of the games. And what I mean by the games is, you remember those challenge cards, which were the unused images that were done as art? Well, if you figured out who all 9 models were, you could send in and you could get in return a sweatshirt. Now, that's a pretty strong, that's pretty impressive that you could get a whole sweatshirt for guessing those right. But the quiz card, if you guessed right all of the questions on the quiz card, you send that in and you get the whole 9-card promo set, which was interesting. But what I really get a kick out of is if they said that if they ran out of the promo cards, then you could also get a sweatshirt. So those sweatshirts must have been pretty cheap because they were giving them away a lot. But that's what the challenge cards and the quiz card from the main set, that's the whole point. That's what they were built around. And the send away, that provided you with the ability to do so. And these were 1 per pack, so they weren't running out of these. They were not rare at all. So outside of just this, the one thing that it just absolutely bewilders me they didn't do is they did not make posters. I really don't understand why they didn't make posters of any of these pictures, because they were perfectly designed for posters and they looked great. They did at least do a calendar in 1993, and that was a relief. So you do get larger images of a number of the models, and in later years there would be additional calendars as well. But they did that, and they also did a tie-in, and the tie-in was with Sport Magazine. Now, Sport Magazine, their annual swimsuit issue, like I said, in 1991 they'd already had Brooke Morales as their cover model, but they didn't bother to do that they didn't do a tie-in with any of the models that were currently working with BenchWarmer. In the years later, you would start to see some of the models pop up in some of the later magazines, but for 1993, the relationship between BenchWarmer and Sport Magazine were separate. All they did was they put together a special little booklet designed specifically around promoting BenchWarmer. This is 8 pages, 16 models. There is essentially a front and there is essentially a back. 15 of the models, you get to see them in a swimsuit, and you get to see the card corresponding to them in each case. Only on the front is that not the case. But it's a little booklet, and it was sent out to, interestingly enough, subscribers. And the reason I mention that is normally, if you do something special, you do that with the newsstand release, so that either you're bringing new people in because there's something special about that release, or subscribers might want to go and get the newsstand copy as well to get whatever's in it. But this is a promo for the brand of BenchWarmer, so they wanted to do it in reverse, so they sent these out to all of the Sport Magazine subscribers, and so they got this in conjunction. So that is there. That's a part of it. But I mentioned about the Prism cards. I wanted to save that for last because, unfortunately, the last chapter of BenchWarmer for 1992, it doesn't end on a high note. Connie Woods discovered that her business partner was selling boxes of cards without her involvement. She went to court to get this settled, and the court essentially told her that it's the early 90s, and in the business world, women still couldn't have nice things. Connie, unfortunately, was not able to continue forward with BenchWarmer in the years following. The Prism cards, like I said, they came from redemption cards that came in packs. But eventually, in later boxes, the Prism cards themselves came at a rapid pace. So, the Prism cards themselves, it's just a 4-card set, and it looks really archaic, but at the time it was actually pretty cutting edge. And they are, they're not really all that exciting. The whole point is that they're flashy objects. That's what they were. But you can get boxes where they're just laden with these Prism cards that apparently had not been redeemed. In fact, some boxes actually have a sticker on it talking about how it has Prism cards. I assume these were from these later releases. I don't know how things lined up. Regardless, the end of the 1992 BenchWarmer card set is the beginning of the new era with the 94 set and the 97 set and the 2000 set, as BenchWarmer would continue on separate from its founder. I'm going to look at those later on. I'm going to look at how things evolved with BenchWarmer, but that's going to be another video. But for this video, I wanted to look at what Connie Woods created and how she was able to envision and turn into reality a card set that I have a lot of respect for what it is. I really think it's amazing. And I can't say enough how much I have a deep respect for what she created, and I wish she could have been a part of it. She basically had to go back to sitting by the phone and waiting for the opportunities, and she does appear in at least one other card set, but she was never a part of BenchWarmer. So again, I'll look at that at a later time, but this is the 1992 BenchWarmer set, where it came from, why it was created, and what it is. and it really is pretty impressive. So, thank you for sticking with it. I hope that you've learned quite a bit. If you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and check out my other videos. And yeah, thank you very much for watching.